Because that's what we're talking about today. No guarantees. No guarantees. I grew up in a real macho family. Ever since I was 7 years old, I was always told it was wrong to share my feelings. I was always told it was weak, it was unmanly. And every time I'd go and I'd want to share my feelings with my family, they'd always tell me, don't bother me now. Don't wear your heart on your sleeve. I don't want to see you cry. Go to your room. Consequently, I never ever told my mother or my father or my brother that I loved them. Never. And I wanted so much in my life for my father to be my best friend. I really wanted that. About 3 years ago, I was speaking at a high school, and somebody pulled me off to the side in the middle of the talk and said, Jim, you've got some major problems, you better take care of them. It turned out my father had had a series of heart attacks. I could barely finish the assembly. I was so torn up. I got on the next plane. He lives in New York City. Got to the hospital about 3 or 4 hours later. Walked in the hospital room, and there was my father laid out. Intravenous bottles coming out all over, tubes sticking out. And I looked at this guy and I said, no way, no way. See, I'd never ever seen my father but anything but the rock that I thought that he was. He never showed any emotion, never showed any feelings. And I walked over to his bed, and I grabbed his hands, and I wanted to tell this guy I loved him. I wanted to tell him he was special. I wanted to tell him he had made a difference in my life. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. He was hanging by a thread, and I couldn't even tell him. I sat there 2 solid days. Just got up to eat, slept in the chair next to his bed. And my father would wake up sometimes for a minute or two, sometimes a little bit longer. And each time he woke up, that was another opportunity for me to tell him that I cared. And each time it was stuck in my throat. So each time he woke up, I'd say, Dad, you need anything? You want me to get the nurse? How you feeling? When in my gut, what I wanted to tell him was that he had made a difference for me in my life. My father survived the heart attacks. To this day, I'm not sure quite how. There were 3 in succession. About a year later, I got essentially a second chance to tell him that I cared. I had a speaking engagement in New York City, and I called him up and I said, Dad, let's get together for dinner, just you and I need to talk to you. And he gave me the perfect out. He says, you know, Jimmy, he says, I got plans tonight. He said, how about making lunch? I had a talk to give, I had television commitments, I had meetings, I had things sandwiched through the whole day. The whole day. I rearranged everything but that talk to get to the restaurant so that I could tell him that I cared about him. And I got to that restaurant and I was in a panic. I was in a panic. I was just torn inside. What do I tell him? What's not going to make him laugh at me? What's not going to make him put me down? What's not going to make him just be quiet? And I was sitting there at the restaurant doing all these mind games, going back and forth, trying to plan a strategy of what words would touch him. And finally, I just couldn't sit still anymore, and I just got up and I started walking around the block. And I never looked at the time. I got back to the restaurant, I was 15 minutes late, and my father, who's Mr. Punctuality, never been late for an appointment in his life, the first thing he did was jam me. He says, why are you 15 minutes late? He says, you know I've only got an hour for lunch. He says, when are you going to be on time? And I looked at this guy and I said, no way am I going to tell him. Except I looked back over my father. He had lost 50 pounds since the heart attacks. His face had no color. And I knew that this guy was not going to make it more than a few months. And I just reached over again and I grabbed his hands. And I said, Dad, thanks for waiting up till 2 o'clock in the morning when I didn't show up all night. Thanks for standing by me when I tore the cartilage in my knee and I couldn't finish the last 3 football games. And a ton of people came down on me. Thanks for bailing me out a couple times, Dad. I really love you. It was the last possible reaction that I could have planned in my mind. I never saw it at my grandfather's funeral ever in my father's life. For the first time in my life, I looked over my father and I watched him cry. I actually watched him cry. All the stuff that had been sitting inside of me, I just let go. And I just reached over and I held him. I didn't want to let him go. I didn't want to let him go. I could tell every one of you in this room without any embarrassment at all, that ranks at the top, the very top of the best moments I've ever had in my life. And I got together with my father the next morning for breakfast, and he told me something that I never even knew. He said, Jim, I would have gone to my grave and not been able to tell you I loved you. Because my grandfather told him that it was wrong. And he just passed it on to me. Just passed it on to me. First time I ever told this story, a young girl at a high school was moved to get up out of her seat to call her father, who was in the hospital, to tell him for the first time in 10 years that she cared about him. And her father couldn't believe it. He said, come on over. He says, I've been waiting so long to hear you say this. Come on over. She got over there at 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning. Stayed till 11 o'clock that night, and her and her father just unloaded all the things that had been pushed so far deep inside them. And they just opened up to each other. And she was feeling incredibly close to her father, and she said, Dad, I want to stay with you tonight, please. I've never been this close to you. And her father said, make an old man happy and go home. You look real tired. We'll pick this up again tomorrow morning. And she said, no, Dad, come on. I've been away from you too long. Please let me be here tomorrow morning when you get up. And her father said, why don't you go home? Reluctantly, she went and left the hospital. Went home. At 7:30 the next morning, her father died on the operating table. And I got a call from her the first day of grief. The first day of grief of all things. To thank me. To thank me for giving her the courage to tell her father how much she cared about him. And I have it up on my bulletin board because her words touched me so much. She said, Jim, she said, I had a lot of time. My dad and I had a lot of time together, and yet we had no time together. I spoke at a high school where a young girl wasn't so lucky. She waited until 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon to go home and tell her father how much she cared. Her father, who was 38 years old, had been cleaning out the garage. And there was an ambulance in the driveway. He had dropped dead of a heart attack. 38 years old! And I got a call from her the first day of grief, too. And she said, Jim, I know you get a chance to talk to thousands of people in your life. Tell them not to wait. Tell them I waited a half an hour too long. There are many of you in this room that have friends in this room, family in this room, that you've never told that you cared about them. Please realize that there is no guarantee that the person that you care about is going to make it home tonight. No guarantee that the person that you care about is going to make it home tonight. In a couple of minutes, if you've got some courage, there'll be an opportunity to let that person in the room know that they made a difference in your life, that they've been there when you needed them. And to me, this is the best part of the assembly. It's the best, because you guys own it. You guys own it. I've watched incredible courage during this part of the assembly. At a high school in Michigan, a young boy who had an encephalitic head from birth defects, pencil-thin arms, no more than 3 feet tall, got up in front of the whole school and said, "Why do you guys put me down?" He says, "I didn't mean to be born like this." He said, "When I go down the halls, you guys look away." He said, "I need friends." He said, "Please be my friend. I can't go it alone." He says, "I go home at night and I sit by myself." He said, "Please be my friend." And he got through speaking, and 100 people were moved to get up out of their seats, to come up and pat him on the back, to tell him he was special, to tell him that they would be his friend. And he came back up to the mic and he said to everybody in the room, he says, "This doesn't change my appearance." He says, "I know that I'll always be walking down the streets and people will look away." He says, "But I want every one of you in this room to know that there'll be some nights when I'm in my room feeling alone. I'll remember that some of you were willing to care about me, and maybe it'll pull me through." The biggest act of courage, bar none, I don't care how many schools I speak at, this will always for me seem impossible. A young girl, she was just beautiful, had been leaving school 6 or 8 weeks before the assembly, not telling anybody in school why she was leaving. And she got up in front of the whole school and she says, "I was afraid to tell all of you guys. I was afraid you'd put me down. I'll tell you why I was leaving school every day at noon." She says, "But now I'm more afraid of the reason why I'm leaving than I am of any of you." She says, "I'm 16 years old," she says, "and I found out 4 weeks ago that I've got cancer. I've been taking chemotherapy treatments, and it's made me too sick to come back to school." She says, "I'm 16 years old and I don't want to die." She says, "I need all of you. I cannot go this alone. The pain is too much." She said, "Please be there for me. I'm scared. I don't want to go it alone." And in front of the whole school, she took off her wig and she was completely bald from the chemotherapy treatments. I had to get out of the way for 2 solid hours. 2 hours. While everyone in that school lined up to cry with her, to care about her, to tell her she was special, to tell her they weren't going to let her go through it alone. 2 hours. I got a letter from her at Christmas time. And in the letter it said, "Jim, I don't know who's winning, the cancer or me, but my friends are helping me through. My friends are helping me through." That's the key. There are many of you in this room that have had friends in your life that have been there when you needed them, that have saved your life, that you have never ever told that you cared about them. Live with that reality that there is no guarantee that that person is going to make it home tonight. The key, by the way, to this part of the assembly is the support that you guys give to each other. If one of you in this room tells a friend what a difference they made in your life, that friend better be out of their seats, letting you know that you're special too, letting you know that you've made a difference. First time I ever did this sharing part was at a high school in Detroit. And a young girl got up in front of the whole school and she said, "I want to thank all of you in the room in the hope that someday I'm going to be a great singer in my life." And everybody in the room laughed at her! Nothing I could do at that moment could take away that put down. Nothing could change that. So if you get up and acknowledge a person in your life who's made a difference for you, who's been there when you needed him, who saved your life, that person better find their way out of their seats to let you know that you're special too. Is there anyone in this room that's had somebody in their life who's made a difference for them, who's been there when they needed it, who saved their life?
My dad's been on the operating table because he's had a heart attack, and I don't know when he's gonna go. But they're trying to stop it, and I haven't said "I love you" to my father. But you know damn well where I'm going as soon as I get out of here.
My mom and dad have done a lot for me.
It's okay. Somebody hug him, please.
And I've,
God.
I'm not, I haven't been too fair with them. They've done a lot for me. Probably do a lot. I've let them down so many times. I'm doing bad in school right now. I'm doing bad at home. They mean so much to me, and I never told them that I loved them. Never once. Never told my mom I loved her, my dad, or my brother. Never once told them I loved him.
I'm really nervous. I shouldn't be nervous. I sing and I get up in front of people all the time, but I am. I'm going through a really drastic change in my life. My boyfriend and I, of over 3 years, broke up a few weeks ago. And I just wanted to thank each and every one of my friends because I love you. Thank you for helping me.
Okay, I'm like totally nervous. I want to ask Mrs. Morris to come up here. Okay, this is the B-17 lady that takes care of all the detentions and referrals and everything. And I just want to say that this is my grandmother. I live with her and she has a big heart, and I just want to say I love you.
Last year during math, I had this one teacher, Mrs. Stewart. She was a great friend. to me. Thank you.
Okay, I just moved here in September, and my school I moved here from Pennsylvania, and my school was really close, and I was kind of nervous about moving out here, but after seeing the spirit you guys have today, man, this is great. I'm really happy to be here. You guys are great.
It takes a lot to get up here in front of all you people and tell my brother that I love him. And I know that he loves me. And if he wants to stay up there right now, just, you know, I'll go up there after him.
I like to talk about my parents. And I'm not going to say how great they are, how much I love them, how much they help them, how much they help me, because they never have. I don't think anybody here can honestly say that their parents are the best things in their life. But I used to fight with my parents all the time, like everybody else. And I never listened to them, and just the normal teenage stuff with my parents. But most of you know that like 5 months ago, they moved out, so I live by myself now. And I miss them now. And I feel it hurts me inside when I think about how I treated them when they were around, and now that they're not around, you know, I can't tell them now because I never see them. And, you know, everybody says, oh great, you live by yourself, party time and all this stuff. And it was, for the first month or two. But now, I go home, you know, like at 9 o'clock at night, and there's no one there. I'm by myself. I can't talk to anybody when I get home. I can't tell them how I feel. I can't tell them what I did. And it's got to the point where I'm so lonely and I'm afraid at my house by myself that I have a gun next to my bed. So if someone comes in, I'll shoot them. And I just want to say that you're not really going to get along with your parents, but just try to make it work a little bit and try to understand where they're coming from, because they're not going to be there forever. They're going to leave sometime and you're going to be alone. And it's not a very good feeling.
Well, I don't know. I was just up here because I want to thank some of the friends that I left out, and I guess it's a big part of my life that I left out. And I really didn't realize it until about half an hour ago, who really were my friends, and who really cared about me. It's all you, right there, and you guys. And I know that these guys are my real friends, and I love you guys for it.
I'm feeling pretty good right now, and I have been for about the past month or two. I got the greatest girlfriend in the world. I'm the singer of a band that I really think will be on MTV someday, I hope. This war with the hoofballs and the theater arts, the geeks or whatever you want to call them, it's got to stop, all right? It's been going on for centuries, okay? And this feeling of love that's going through here right now, that everybody's feeling great, everyone cares about each other and stuff, and it'll be that way tomorrow, it's got to last. It can't just be here for a couple days like it was last year with Tom. Oh, great, anti-drugs, and then where do you go from there? It's got to last, people. You can't just leave it at that. I got a bunch of great friends. Wayne, Greg, Gene, Dave, everybody, all right? You guys are all great. One of them, who's the bassist of my band, which got me into the band. Thank you, Dave. I'm just feeling great, and I hope you can too. And hey, buddy, as long as you're going to this school, you got a friend, man.
About 2 years ago, quite unexpectedly, a man came into my life and just reached inside and found parts of me that he expressed in his music. And I realized that he had a message. He's been all over the world, just did a concert in Moscow for 10,000 students. He's written a song that we introduced last year at Westlake High School. At the time that he introduced the song, 15 minutes before he was ready to go on, he found out that his mother had cancer and dedicated the song to her. In the last year, I cannot think of a person that has been closer in my life, that has given me more strength and more understanding and more support, more love than my friend Carl Anthony.
With every moment there is more than meets the eye, and I want to learn to say I love you all the time. Time is a funny thing, it's such a simple word, but I don't understand it. I just want to be with you for the rest of time, all that there is of time. Now I admit I am afraid to lose you, but it's more than that. I'm afraid to let you go, 'cause you know, ooh, it's so hard to let you know that I love you. Do you know that I care? I want to tell you in time. With every moment there is more than meets the eye, and I want to learn to say I love you all the time. Time is a funny thing, it's such a simple word, but there are no guarantees with time. Or maybe it's part of the plan, or part of the way to help me to say, do you know that I love you? Do you know that I care? I want to tell you in time. With every moment there is more than meets the eye, and I want to learn to say I love you all the time. With every moment there is more than meets the eye, and I want to learn to say I love you all the time. Do you know that I love you? Do you know that I care? I I want to tell you, I want to tell you, I want to tell you in time.
There's a lot of courage here today. I'd like you to now give a big round of support of all those people whose courage it took to come to the mic. For many of you, this may not have been the way. Some of you in this room, this is difficult. I hope that those of you in this room, if this wasn't the way, that you'll find somehow, some possibility to be able to connect with that person who's made a difference in your life. You can write them a letter, you can call them on the phone, you can visit them, but take the initiative. Take the initiative. None of you wants to be alone. In an auditorium that probably seated, I would imagine, a couple thousand people, 75 people gathered, and they were scattered literally all over the auditorium. And Lennon came out of the side curtain, and he was a real soft-spoken man. And he came up to the mic and he said to everybody in the room, he said, "I am no more talented than any of you." And I nudged the guy next to me. I couldn't hear a thing he said. Nobody in the room could hear it. And so he came back up to the mic and he said to everybody in the room, he said, in the loudest voice possible, he says, "I'm no more talented than any of you guys in this room." And sure enough, a guy in the back of the room raised his hand and he said, "Hey John, how can you tell us we're nobodies? The world's singing your music, your concerts are standing room only, you're making a ton of money. How can you tell us we're nobodies?" And he said, "The only difference between myself and you is if I've got a song inside, if I've got a dream in my gut, I can have somebody write it, somebody play it, somebody promote it, and hopefully somebody buy it. Every one of you in this room has something special to offer. But it doesn't mean anything if you get up at this mic and the entire school is moved to get up out of their seats to tell you how great you are if you guys don't buy it inside. It's my hope that one of you will see me walking down the street one day in a mall someplace, come up and tap me on the shoulder and say, "You know, hey Jim, I heard you speak 5, 10, 15 years ago. I want you to know I'm going after my dreams. I'm feeling great about myself. And most of all, which means the most to me, I'm giving to a whole lot of people." And I'll walk away with an incredible smile on my face. Every one of you in this room can make something happen in your lives.